Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new episode of Lawyers with Stories. And today is an interesting episode because our guest isn't a lawyer, but she has a very interesting story, and you'll come to hear of it as we progress. So today's guest is Elyse Salley. Um, she wears a lot of hats, and I'll let her introduce herself to you just now. I'll probably forget something, but Elyse is based in Florida, in good old US of A. And she and I are friends. We met up on LinkedIn simply because she had a story. I mean, literally, this conversation or this guest is the embodiment of what this podcast is about. I connected to her as a single mom. Can I check in on you every day or every now and then? And she was like, cool. So it wasn't even a professional connection that we made, but of course, we do share a love for alternative dispute resolution. Although that is not often on our agenda for talking, but we just connect on a human level, and I think that's what we're trying to put across in this podcast, that there are professionals are human beings first, and you want to learn from as many of them as possible, from their mistakes, from the things they did right, so that your journey can be smooth and you don't have to have as many detours, because some of us have experienced it for you, and we can sort of put up signposts along the way. So Elyse, you can introduce yourself to our guests, and then we'll get going.
Yes, thank you. So I am Elyse Salley. I founded Serenity Mediation, and that focuses on all the alternative dispute resolution methods, which I think should just be what we go to instead of litigation. It shouldn't be alternative. It should just be, this is what it is. So I focus on everything that has to do with families, at least for now. Family mediation, guardian ad litem, and that's like a third neutral person who comes in if it's really contentious with minor children or dependents, and investigates both households and both parents and the school and whatever else needs to be investigated, and then presents some sort of parenting plan or time-sharing plan to the judge with their recommendations. And then also I've recently picked up some collaborative training. So that's another thing I'm able to do. I haven't started that yet. And then in February, in a few weeks, I'll get certified as a parenting coordinator. So that is a person who, in my mind, where a behavior analyst would come into a home and help the parents implement a behavior plan for the children, a parenting coordinator helps the parents implement the parenting plan or create the parenting plan, and also helps foster appropriate communication between the parents, because that's something that we see so often, is that parents get divorced or split up and then just cannot stand each other, don't want to communicate, and then the children suffer, and it shouldn't be that way. So it is trying to help families when they're already in this strife.
And as we were talking just before we started recording, you don't have a law background. Okay, your background is in behavioral science, right?
Yes, it's behavior analysis. So
it's
go ahead.
Behavior analysis, yeah. So your desire to get involved in the legal system is because of your personal experience within the system. So maybe just elaborate on that.
Yep, my personal involvement in the system and seeing how terrible the system can be and how people are able to abuse the system, whether they have ample amounts of money or they don't, or they just have ample amounts of motivation to slow or manipulate the process. That was, I think, my most recent post that I had about Did You Know, is that if you create a case with an emergency motion, you will delay that mandatory mediation before trial, and you can delay it indefinitely, because once you open it in that sense, you can then do your discovery phase for years. And that's what my case has been going through. The person on the other side of it opened it as an emergency. And then almost 3 years into it now, we are still in discovery. And they just keep adding on extra things. We've got the guardian ad litem. We're currently undergoing a social investigation, which includes psychological evaluations and home studies. And I have spoken on doing a vocational assessment on me. They're basically trying to do everything they can to get me to just give up my child, and it will never happen. So I, instead of being bogged down by this, am taking it as an opportunity to learn everything I can and help as many other families and children as I can to not go through this experience.
I think, speaking from a law student's perspective, I think even when you started your Bachelor of Science degree, there was no telling how practically it would work out, right? How it would flesh out. And
that's true.
You have to like we go in, and especially with law students, it's like we watch TV and we watch Suits, and it's like everyone just wants to be in litigation, and but once you are in the system, and suddenly my eyes were opened after I left practice, or after I left an active position in a law firm. Your eyes are open to what actually happens to your client, what actually happens to you, and then you start to look at the practicalities and say, okay, this is not, we may be winning the case, or we might be earning a lot of fees, but ... children are still suffering. And it's once you get out there, you don't have to have a personal experience with the system, like in your case, but just something may not sit with you in the right way, and so you start to think and innovate and say, okay, this is not what I studied at university. Nobody prepared me for example, the perils of family law. Family law can be quite, you can suffer a lot of vicarious trauma as a practitioner. And law school and university doesn't prepare you for dealing with these sensitive and often very emotional cases. And so you think, okay, what can I do? How can I help people? Because ultimately we're supposed to be helping people, right? We're not supposed to be servicing a system. We're supposed to be, like in your case, now you want, because you've experienced the dark side of the system, as it were, you've now gone into mediation because you want that to change, and I think that's so important for law students, law graduates, any kind of graduate really, that at some point you start feeling uncomfortable with the status quo. You start questioning your lecturers and your even some of the senior guys in the field. You're like, why is it like this? Or why are you happy when somebody loses? Or you got to start asking those questions. What are your thoughts on that approach?
Oh, what are my thoughts?
Yeah.
I was just in my own world thinking, yes, I fully agree with this, because I was thinking about my daughter's father's attorney, who has been in this field for decades, and how he's just so behind the times and has no desire to change his practice, even in such simple things as communicating with me and the court system, is putting our last name and then verses in between it. Where in family court, it is not supposed to be verses. You are not fighting your co-parent. It is supposed to be an ampersand or an and or something. And simple things like that, even just language, can be so important. And I definitely see that there are a lot of attorneys and other practitioners who are set in their ways and like to litigate and maybe have different intentions than I do, which is fine because everyone's different, but some of those intentions may not benefit families the way that my intentions can.
Yeah, and the nice thing about your story is that, gory details omitted, but something good has come of it. So like we were talking just before we started recording, is that you could sit with your bad situation. You could sit and feel sorry for yourself and become a statistic. Let your children become a statistic. Say, what can I do? What do I have in my hand? Like, it's not much. No one will listen to me.
Right.
But I mean, you, myself included, we've opened our mouths. We've taken a step, and we said it's not going to be. We refuse to keep that cycle. And it's something that I'm always encouraging. At least my audience being law students and graduates and entry-level legal professionals, I am always encouraging them to question, to contribute their own insights, just to be a bit of not a controversial figure, but be a disruptor.
Yeah.
Just to provoke. Yeah, I mean, if you really, I always take them back to, why did you study law? And if you study law to help people and to give back to your community, then it behooves you to have to ask sometimes questions that will make you unpopular, right? And go against the grain. And I think the fact that you have now started your mediation firm, right? And being a single mother with running a business, 2 young children, and then you are upskilling on the side. It was nice to hear you got the additional sort of certifications.
Oh yeah, I'm always doing something. Plus the PhD too. Yeah. I mean, it's always something.
Instead of feeling sorry, like you're like, okay, like I'm gonna start the firm. This is not gonna happen to one more family, and I'm going to upskill myself to be able to provide the services that are needed and sort of rescue people from the system and just be that sort of, beacon within the system. And I think that's very inspiring. It always inspired me. I'll speak for myself, to just be out there and say, tell the world I'm here, and I'm not going to let what's happening to my family happen to yours. And that's the kind of professional and human that I would, get behind. So I think that's probably what made us click in the first place. So maybe just, it probably has been a long time, but like I said, my audience is quite diverse. So we all of us wish we knew certain things at university that we know now. So I mean, I don't know if you went in with a lot of guidance and planning and had like a career mapped out, but maybe you could just like share what your experiences were like, even as a Bachelor of Science student. I mean, a student's a student, no matter what you study. So maybe just share like how you navigated university and whether you ever saw yourself coming to this point.
Sure. No, I did not predict family law, but I knew from a young age that I wanted to study psychology and behavior. I was given an IQ test in first grade, and I thought, oh, that was so fun. I really liked that test. And then I was given another one in 7th grade for someone's dissertation, where they were looking at the plasticity, or I guess the change that can happen in IQ scores in gifted children between elementary school and middle school. And that was when I realized, okay, the way that I can test people and do things like this is psychology. So that in 7th grade, I knew that I wanted to do psychology. I did that as my undergraduate. While I was in psychology, I really started liking statistics and thought about doing a double major in that, but that would have taken another 2 years. And I was like, nope, I'm not staying another 2 years just for a double major. So I did a minor in statistics. And after that, I did a couple other masters and did not complete them because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at that point. I first did environmental political science masters, and I think I did a semester, maybe 2, and I really liked the environmental side of it, could not stand the political science side of it, so I left that one. And then I went and I did part of a school counseling master's, and I know I only did 1 semester of that because I thought, oh, this is too easy, I don't want to spend money on something like this. So I worked after that for a little bit as a psychosocial rehabilitation specialist. That was something I was able to do with my bachelor's alone. And it was in that job that I learned about behavior analysis, and I took the steps in order to get that master's, which was exceptional education and then a specialty in behavior analysis. So you have separate classes for it. And then there's a board certification that I got in that. And I worked doing that for years. I think I worked in people's homes for about 8 years doing behavior analysis, which was fine. I love behavior analysis as a field. I don't have a personal connection to that type of work, but I do love the study of it, and I love to speak on it. It's one of the main things that I speak about whenever I speak about family law or anything else. I always go back to behavior. And I do think that is such a great thing for me to know about and to have, because I've always liked watching and listening and studying behaviors. And because human behaviors are in anything, I can pretty much pursue any field I want to that has to do with behaviors, and it still satiates me and fulfills me. So family law is not much different, because I get to see a lot of behaviors and work with people and watch people, and it just feels very similar, and it just hits me in that good spot of this feels right, this feels good. But no, I did not foresee doing this. Definitely not. I mean, I finished my bachelor's 14 years ago and my master's 10 years ago. So it was kind of just a 10-year floating around working in behavior analysis before I really found my passion in this.
Okay. Yeah, the nice, one of the positive things there is that you built on your initial degree. And I must say, a lot of us don't get that inside knowledge from the time we're in grade school, or here we call it primary school. So we used to know, in first grade and then in 7th grade. I mean, most of us are still
a big school nerd.
We were still trying to navigate friends and puberty and going to high school. Myself included, I had no idea in 7th grade. Although I think people on the outside might have predicted. I know my granddad predicted when I was 16. He sort of had my character. He had it mapped out. And he sort of knew. So he sort of knew what I would be, what I would get into. Yeah. But I mean, it's really a blessing to know at so young an age, what you want to do. But I think a lot of us, we depend too much on career guidance at school, and we wait for open days and career fairs, and a lot of the time the information there it can be too curated sometimes, so that we get a very narrow view of, for example, the law profession or the psychology profession, and then we're told to apply to these firms only, and so our view of our future careers, even in school, in high school, can be a bit jaundiced, because we're not given open where we can choose and have an informed decision. No, law is not for me, or this is for me. So it's nice to hear that you had that insight, so young. And I think the next positive is that you built on your initial qualification. So that's something that I encourage our students to do, is just say, okay, guys, your law degree is just a foundation. Any undergraduate degree is just a foundation. And you can build on it, not with another degree necessarily, but with certifications. Here we call them diplomas. You could do something online, and you just like sort of create like a little building for yourself, like qualification wise.
Right.
And so I think like future, like a prospective employer I would enjoy looking at a resume that had that kind of setup in the qualification section, and even if you've done something like a free course, like put it down, but it just tells me that, you, number one, you didn't want to waste time. Number two, you realize there were gaps in your knowledge. And I think when we come off a bachelor's degree, as we call them here, or an undergraduate degree, there are definitely gaps in your knowledge. Never mind the practical side of things that they don't tell you about. Right. But, if you want to niche up, like if you want to specialize, like in your case, you went into behavior analysis slowly but surely. And of course, now you're finding yourself here. And from what you're saying, the skills are transferable, and that's something that you get from, I know I get it from law students, where they will tell me, but I studied, I worked in the aviation industry. I have no legal experience. And I'll say, no, but you sit down and do an inventory, because you probably have a lot of transferable skills. So it's actually nice to hear what you said, because you didn't see yourself even doing something remotely legal, and maybe not even in alternative dispute resolution. But you're finding that behavior analysis, psychology is intrinsic to not just the legal profession and litigation and dealing with clients, but it's in mediation, in doing what we call them here, curator ad litem, in doing that kind of work at court. You have that skill set where you can look at behavior. Not that behavior is conclusive, but you can look at that and have a bit of an inside track over most lawyers. So it's nice. I think if you have to trace a path, and there are people that have approached me that have backgrounds. They've started probably somewhere in the sciences or in engineering, right, and they found their way into law. And I'm saying there will always be that link. You might think, oh, I never envisioned myself ending up in law. But if you really look at your path and you say, okay, what about engineering, or what have I got from engineering that actually is helping me now? And you'll find that link between two seemingly unrelated careers. So I think that's a nice encouragement, or nice for people, a nice kind of push for people to see that you can start in another career, or you can even, the other thing is age. A lot of people will work for X amount of years in a certain field, and they'll say, I have 30 years of experience as a teacher, and then they're coming into law, or they're coming into another field, and it's like, no, you can actually use those skills. You just got to sit and make a list of, I have these soft skills, I have these hard skills. How is this going to help me if I'm going to make a career jump? So I think that's it's nice that you've seen that link now, that if I didn't do behavioral science, if I didn't do psychology, if I didn't build on my qualifications, then you'd probably be a little bit shortchanged now in what you're doing.
Maybe. Definitely. I don't know. I feel like a lot of it has to do with motivation too. I mean, if you have the motivation to do something, you're going to find out how to do it one way or another. And that was another thing that I was really lucky to get from an early age from my mom, is that yes, she was very strict, but she also built up my self-confidence and my self-assuredness in my abilities. So I don't ever experience imposter syndrome or things like that people talk about. I'm just like, yeah, I want to do this. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I will do this. So I just figure it out. And I'll have to thank my mom for that. We'll call her after this.
No, definitely. I mean, that's a nice place to bring in like your family background, because from what you told me, it was less than ideal, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
again, you're looking at somebody most unlikely to be in the position that you're in now. Like, you could have taken the victim route a long time ago. Um, so maybe just like I think if I remember correctly from the last time, you said that watching people's behavior, even in your growing up, might have also contributed to you choosing to study what you studied. So maybe just go a bit into your background and just walk us through how you're growing up and what it was like growing up.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go back to the very beginning. Is that my parents were both married to other people when I was conceived, which you don't hear about too often, and probably contributes to why I'm not married and why I've never had a successful relationship, because I've never seen one. I've never grown up with one. They did get married to each other when I was 1, and were married very, very briefly until I think I was about 5 or 6. And then I remember my dad first left. He moved out when I was 6, and I lived with just my mom from 6 to 8. And I have no memories from those 2 years. And then my mom left at 8. So I went back to my dad and his girlfriend at the time, who I didn't know. I just had to one day move into his house, his girlfriend's house. And my mom went to Oregon, across the country, with her boyfriend at the time. So I was passed back and forth. And my feeling as a child, of course, you don't have developed feelings and thoughts yet, was both of my parents left me. That's what I took onto myself.
Yeah.
I was first left by my dad, and then I was left by my mom. And the mom one hurt a lot more. So I've done therapy, multiple times throughout the years about that. And then when she was gone, I was with my dad and that first girlfriend for maybe a year. And then they broke up, and my dad and I got this cheap little apartment for a year or 2. And then he started dating the person that he married. So I think they got married when I was 11. I did not like her. I did not attend the wedding, and she and I never got along. So it was a terrible experience for all 3 of us between the ages of 11 until I moved out at 17 to go to college. And from what I remember, they actually put my stuff out on the curb and said, "Your stuff is outside, come get it." And then I just, moved onto my own, which is what I wanted. Didn't want to be around them. And I have no contact with either of them, with my dad or his wife. I haven't spoken to them in years and don't plan to speak to them again. Because I finally learned, I'd say about a year, maybe 2 years ago now, so at 33 years old, that you don't have to have relationships with people just because you're related to them. I choose to have relationships with people who treat me the way that I want to be treated and love me the way that I want to be loved. So it's been a huge journey for me over the past, I guess, 35 years at this point.
Yeah. No, I mean that's probably probably the story of a lot of people in different versions. But it's just that we think that doesn't factor into who we are today. And a lot of us grew up without the stability, without resources. You had to hustle our way through university, work 4 different jobs, and like you moved out at 17. A lot of my audience, they would still be at home at 17, but just I can't imagine what that did to your psychology as a child, just being passed around.
Right. So you grow up very quickly. You learn not to trust your parents, and you become your own parent, is at least what happened to me.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a real story, and it's a very unideal story in terms of, okay, like, so how do you pull yourself together? How do you pull up your socks? How do you get yourself through school? And of course, you mentioned that you are not able to have successful relationships because You never had a point of reference growing up,
I did
so you
not.
don't know what that looks like. So and the nice thing is that, and I think everyone should have a therapist. Everyone should go for therapy. Is that you're working on that?
Right.
You know, you're
Yeah,
working on.
self-development is huge.
Yeah. So, and that's something that lawyers have. You know, they have a problem with getting help. You know, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring to know that, you know, you didn't stay broken, or you sort of, and that's what inspires me to do what I do, is that, you know, I still have pieces that need to be amended,
right?
But you don't hold back what you have to offer because I'm not well, or I'm in therapy, or let me get all my stuff together, and then I'll decide. No, you just somehow you say, I'm going to get it together, and people need help, and I'll help them while I'm still in therapy, you know. And I think that's obviously testimony to your resilience, which is something that, you know, I know in the legal profession, junior lawyers have to develop and you develop it. I mean, you don't just develop it in the field, you have to develop it in your personal life. So you have to overcome adversity in your personal life and then develop sort of your capacity or your quotient for resilience. And then you find when you go into the working world, then it's a little bit easier because you've already been through the gauntlet of, you know, tough life or school of hard knocks.
Right.
So I think that's, you know, and I think people that don't have that, to be brutally honest, when they are met with it in the workplace, they are ill-equipped. You know, one of the things that has led me to, you know, even to conflict resolution is that, you know, I've witnessed conflict, and I used to be the one that ran away from it, or I would try to like keep the mood right, you know. So when I encountered difficulties or confrontational people in the field, it was like, oh, I've dealt with this before. So I think those that don't have it, they don't have some hard knocks in their, at least in their personal lives, before they get into the field. You know, it's like when they get into the field and it's hard, then like your quotient is very low, and then you need coaching, you need all kinds of extra outside help to help you navigate. So I think you are, all of that is part of your tapestry.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not choosing for that to determine the flavor of your life. You are actually sorting yourself out, because like with, you know, breaking the cycle with the system, the legal system, you decide within yourself, you know, if I'm going to be mediating and being a guardian ad litem for little children, then I've got to do it from a place of wholeness. So I have to get myself well. So that is also, because a lot of us can stay in that victim space and say, you know, have an agenda for doing the work that we do, and we try to heal, we try to let our work be our catharsis. But I think it's inspiring to know that you are in therapy, and however long it takes, you know, end of the day you're going to be a better professional, because you've got your ducks in a row, you've got your everything. Not everything won't be perfect, but inside at least you'll be whole, even if it took you 35 years to get to this point.
There's always work to be done. I mean, there's never an ending to it. There's always room for self-improvement.
Yeah, and I always educate in the vein that if you are a healthy person, then it will leak through in the way you practice your profession, you know. So if you have anger management issues because you had a bad past and all of those things, then it'll come through, for example, in the way you handle clients. You might have a short fuse, and again, it'll ultimately affect your bottom line. So like, we need to be healthy, and I think that's where I offer the mentorship. And I tell people that they need to go for professional help. They should, because end of the day, your clients are gonna thank you.
Yeah.
They're gonna feel peaceful, and even if you just say one line, they're going to feel like they're left with an answer. So I think that's a very good point today, is that we need to be healthy no matter what our background. And a lot of us, like I said, came from bad or less than ideal backgrounds, but we are where we are today, and we are choosing to get better. For our clients, for our children, for our families, and most importantly for ourselves, because you got to do it for yourself first, and maybe use your children or use clients as like a motivation. But that's, and it's nice to hear that your mom still, even though you were tossed around, like your mom still had that, somewhere she found it in herself to know, okay, this is what parents are supposed to do. Like, let me just, if I never teach the child anything else, it's like, just let me motivate her and let me give her that push. So even though she did eventually disappear, but that certainly seems to have left that mark on you. And of course, it's good to hear that you're working on that relationship as well, which is so obviously, fast forwarding to the present, you have enrolled in a PhD program. Mm-hmm. Have you started on it?
I'm in my second semester right now.
Wow, that's goals for me. That is goals for me. So I think you mentioned you've probably finished in 2027.
Probably so. We'll see what happens. I'm going really slowly with it. I'm doing so many other things that I can't overwhelm myself and then not be a good mother to my children, because that's what I am first and foremost, is a mother.
Absolutely.
While they're young and they need me and I want them.
Yeah. Personally, I would put it on the back burner. Because I definitely agree that role is, raising well-adjusted children or adults is, would be the achievement of a lifetime. Mm-hmm. No amount of degrees or anything would ever come close to that. But for those that are in that life stage that are listening, I'm sure you will agree that above being a lawyer, or above training to be a lawyer, or above studying to be a lawyer, your role as a mother comes first. And of course, if I'm always even encouraging students, like, to plan for that phase of life, because, and sometimes it comes up sooner than expected, but I think there's definitely a juggling act. Definitely, I don't call it a balance. I don't think it's balanced on any day, to be brutally honest. Mm-hmm. So I think it's more of giving yourself space to get it wrong on some days. And I think that's where, maybe if you can speak to professional mothers, or even, there are even people in my audience that might even be older, gone on in years, and they entering the field now, like, or they might be just finished their internship and they're starting, they're fresh lawyers, like how you inspired me. So please share with the listeners how you how you juggle everything, because obviously you've got your outdoor, your fitness routine, which you are very good at, and there's the children's program, and then there's litigation with the fathers. And so please, like, inspire the rest of us, and tell us how you juggle it, how you get it wrong, and if you have learned anything that any workable tips that you can share.
Sure. So I'm pretty regimented as far as, especially with the kids, where we have certain times of the day where bedtime starts. It's always the same routine. It ends at the same time. I do almost no screen time with the kids. So if I do need anything like that, like if I need to take a work call when my 2-year-old is home with me, then I can give her a screen for the 15 minutes or so, and she'll be really into it, because that's not something that they get normally. I am just, I don't know. I think I just live a really regimented, pretty strict life. Like our eating habits, we don't eat any dyes or artificial ingredients or preservatives or anything like that. We just eat healthy. I make sure that the kids have grown up eating a really healthy and variable diet, and I do a lot of first then with them. So I know that people like sugar, and that sugar is addictive. So we do have some things in our house that are refined sugars. But if they want something like that, it's always, okay, well, finish your plate. You've got your vegetable, your meat, and your starch, or whatever else we have, and then you can have this. And no, you never have to finish your plate. I make sure that things are not forced on them. They always have their autonomy. It's like, you don't have to finish your plate, but if you do want this sweet thing, then yeah, you got to finish your plate. And then with myself, I'm regimented, and then I know I have class on certain days. I work on certain days. I don't work on the days that I have the kids, which can get really hard on me financially, because that means that I'm only working 3 days a week. And I think really right now, that's honestly the hardest part in my life, is that I have multiple things weighing on me financially. That's one of them. And that I am so stubborn, and that I want to raise my children in these early years. I've got a 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old, and then a 6-year-old. And so I want to, when I'm with them, be with them 100% of the time until they both start school. So I've got like 1 more year until pre-K, which is half days, and then 2 more years until regular primary school. And then I also have the other thing weighing on me about the case with my daughter's dad, and that he's always trying to get 100% time sharing and money from me, and basically just ruin my life in every way that he can think of. So I have to be regimented in order to survive what I'm going through right now. And at some point, that will end. And I know that will end, and that is what gets me through it. I know that I won't always have to live under these conditions, and that things will get better. And even if they don't, I'm going to make the best of how they are.
So everyone, that was our interview with Elyse Salley from the USA in Florida, or rather Florida in the USA. Although not strictly a lawyer, but you can definitely tell that she has a story. And due to technical difficulties, the interview was cut short. But hopefully you've gained some wisdom. And those of you that are single moms and pursuing a career in the legal field, I'm sure the struggles are not too different. And also, if you might be thinking of starting your own business, Elyse is someone that's been juggling all of that and then some for a long time now. Feel free to reach out to her on LinkedIn, on her Serenity Mediation page, and also on her personal LinkedIn page. Her name is Elyse, Elyse, Salley, Saleey. I'm sure she will respond to your DMs, and if you want to chat with her further, or maybe even want her to be featured again on this podcast, you can leave comments and also leave a review of this episode. Thank you so much for listening.